Welcome, everyone, to the latest episode of The Landscape. It's presented by Hospitality Staffing Solutions. I'm the voice of the Cleveland Monsters, Tony Brown of the American Hockey League, and we're happy to be joined today by the Monsters' head coach in his third season behind the bench for Cleveland. It's Ohio's own Trent Vogelhuber. Trent, thanks for taking some time.
Well, appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Well, let's start right there with the state of Ohio. You know, it's rare for players in this industry to play in one place for a good chunk of their career, but you've gone beyond your playing career. You get to now coach in your home state, and you were born right here in the Cleveland area, right?
I was, yeah. Born here, lived in Hudson until I was 6, and then moved over to Columbus. But crazy how it's worked out, just through youth hockey, college, playing pro, and then coaching, being in all four corners of the state, and obviously families from here, wife's from here, so we love it. And it's a little bit of a coincidence how it's worked out that way, but we couldn't be more thankful.
Yeah, it really is unique. I mean, let's go a little deeper on that. You know, born Northeast Ohio, grew up Central Ohio, but you were drafted by the Blue Jackets in Columbus, right, when they were hosting the draft. It must have been kind of a crazy moment.
Yeah, it was. 07, God, a long time ago now. Columbus hosted the draft, and I was coming off my third ACL surgery at that point, so battled a lot of injuries early on in my career, and I'd kind of gotten wiped off of the central scouting boards, which is the kind of predictions for the draft picks, just with the injury history there. So I was I was a little pessimistic about my draft chances, and Columbus had the last pick in the draft, 211. Mr. Irrelevant, they do not give you a car when you were drafted last in the NHL draft, unfortunately, but they picked me up, and first player from Central Ohio drafted in the National Hockey League, happened to be by the local team, the Blue Jackets, while the draft was in Columbus. So really special moment there, and I was thankful to have been picked by the team that I've been rooting for there for the previous 10 or so years.
Yeah, and since then, Central Ohio's produced a whole bunch of players that have gone on to play in the National Hockey League. And, what does it mean to you to be a part of that group that really took hockey to a new level in this state from where it was maybe when you were growing up?
Yeah, it's a point of pride for me. I mean, Cleveland's got a much richer hockey history, and it's where I learned to skate and play originally. And then having grown up in Columbus, we were taking pretty bad beatings there in youth hockey by the teams in Cleveland and Pittsburgh and Detroit, and then I was on the first junior Blue Jackets AAA team, and we were able to gain some pretty good ground there in the couple years I was there, and just to see the quality of players and quantity that have gone to D1 college, gotten drafted, and are playing in the National Hockey League from Columbus specifically has been pretty special, and it's a point of pride for me to be, the first one drafted from that group, the first one to go to D1 college, and I still have a lot of close relationships with those guys that are still playing today.
Well, let's go back to your college years at the University of Miami, Ohio there, still in the great Buckeye State. But what did that time mean to you? It obviously put you on a path for your career here, but what makes that program so special to you?
Yeah, it was. We had some real good years, 4 years there, NCAA tournament, all four, Frozen Four twice, national championship once, lost in overtime there. So, and our teams were incredible. We had a ton of guys go pro, guys from my teams that are still playing in the National Hockey League, and just taught me how to be a winner and how invested you have to be in your teammates to have success. Some of those guys are still my best friends in the world, and 4 of the best years of my life for sure at Miami down there, and ultimately helped me to get to where I am today. Obviously the playing career, but the tools that I still use today, and as far as coaching.
And you're actually coaching today with a guy that you played for back then at Miami.
Yeah, again, goes back to relationships. He's the guy that recruited me, Chris Bergeron, and brought me into Miami. He was the main reason why, and coached me for 2 years before he left to take a head coaching job there at Bowling Green, and we've stayed in touch then. And I think that's an important lesson. He was a coach, probably around 40 years old at the time, and I was a 19-year-old kid, 20-year-old kid coming in, and we built a relationship that lasted the next 15 years. And when he was available this summer and we had a coaching position, it was the first name that popped in my mind, just because I know how good he is at building relationships with players, and how how important that is for team success, but also for individual player success, and it helped me a ton, and so I was happy to get him on board, but pretty funny how it goes full circle.
When we return on The Landscape, presented by Hospitality Staffing Solutions, we talk to Trent about that magical 2016 Calder Cup championship run and what it meant to him. You know, you talked about learning how to be a winner in those college years. Well, you were here for the winningest season the Monsters have ever had, 2015-16. Before we get into the Calder Cup run, though, I'm wondering what it was like to be playing in the Blue Jackets organization. Before the affiliation change there, you were in Springfield, and then you get word that you guys are coming to Cleveland for the 2015-16 year. What was that transition like, and how excited were you to know you're coming back home?
Yeah, it was incredible. I remember our coach at the time, Jared Bednar. It was our last weekend of the year there in Springfield, and I'd been there for a couple years already, and he announced to the team before our final 2 regular season games that next year we were moving to Cleveland, and the reaction was like all 23 of us got called up, just because, no disrespect to Springfield, but Cleveland's a major league city and it's a different animal, and the lifestyle that we were able to live, compared to what we were doing in a small town like that, just seemed like we'd all gotten called up. We're living in a downtown city, and the fan base is exponentially bigger, and obviously the building we get to play in is night and day compared to what we were playing in out there, and the cities you travel to even are major league cities a lot in this division and conference. So that was incredible, and I think that's a huge part of what gave us success the next year. We were all so excited to be here in Cleveland, and a lot of times at the end of the year in the American League, players are excited to go home. You want to win, but players are excited to go home. It's long, and here we didn't want to leave because we were having so much fun in Cleveland, and obviously our team was good and we loved each other, but we wanted to stay in Cleveland because we had such a good time here, and our situation was so good and the fans are so great. So I think that was a contributing factor to us having the success we did in 2016.
Well, let's talk about sort of that season and the run-up to the championship, because, as I think back to that year, you guys were not dominating the division throughout the regular season. This sort of picked up towards the end of the regular season, and you just built momentum. But what are your memories of the way that, you slowly built your way all the way to a championship contending team?
Yeah, a lot of my memories are from the final 2 or 3 months. But when you do think back and kind of dive a little deeper, there was a lot of growth and a lot of hardships that you go through, and we weren't. I think we finished 3rd in the division that year, and I think it just goes to show you the most important thing that you now as a coach that I keep my focus on is the big picture and growing throughout the year. And yes, you want to win every night, and you have some tough stretches that can be frustrating, but the ultimate goal is getting these guys as individuals to play their best hockey at the most important time of the year, and continuing to teach and harp on the details that will give you success in April, May, and June. And I think that's what we did that year. The final month of the regular season and then the 2 months of the playoffs, we were close to unbeatable. And we just got in our groove and built, but the previous 5 or 6 months got us there. And it wasn't always pretty, but it's something now that I'm coaching that I think about a lot, and when you go through tough stretches, is just continuing to build to try to get our team to feel the best about themselves, playing the best, and ingrain those habits so that they're there when it really matters, and that's in the spring and summer.
Now, I want to ask you about 2 individuals from that team specifically. You were a member of the leadership group there wearing an A, but the guy who wore the C for you is now a head coach in the American League too, and that's Ryan Craig. He was a guy that had a huge influence on everybody. What was his influence on you playing with him in Springfield first and then here in Cleveland on the way to a title?
That was massive, and I talk about learning how to win in college, and I think there was a different level of that by being around Craig, who'd been a pro for a long time. When I got to play with him in my 4 years with him, including Springfield and Cleveland, taught me so much. He just the ultimate lead by example, and bringing people together. And he was a bridge to the coaching staff. He really was. He was kind of a 4th member of their staff also. He wore so many hats for us, and made sure everybody was, all the players were on board, and so good at having those individual conversations and recognizing when somebody maybe was down and bringing them back in. And when you have a leader like that, no disrespect to the coaches we had, which are outstanding, but it makes their job so much easier. He was the ultimate captain that, as far as people that I've been around, taught me how to be a leader, and still a close friend of mine today. And it's no surprise that he's had the success he has. He won a Stanley Cup already as an assistant coach, and now a head coach in the American League as well.
Yeah, that character certainly, left a huge stamp on everybody around him. And then you mentioned him earlier, but let's talk about Jared Bednar, a guy who also has gone on to great things in the NHL as a head coach with Colorado, including lifting a Stanley Cup there. But the way that he sort of got that group locked in, and the way that you said he took a team that scuffled at times in the regular season and helped them build their way to a championship from a coaching perspective, what did you take from working with Jared Bednar?
Yeah, kind of what I mentioned already, just continuous teaching. The continuous teaching throughout the year, never getting too high, too low as far as where your team's at. And we just got better and better. And, I think it was, he's obviously a smart hockey man as far as X's and O's go. But what I loved about Bedsy is that, the relationship he had with you when he was coaching you had zero impact on what he felt about you as a person. And I think that's important, and something I've carried with me is it's never personal, and coach can be hard on a player and have those honest conversations, but it doesn't mean he doesn't like you. He's not going to look down on the floor when you cross each other in the hallway because you didn't play, or you didn't play as much that game, or you've had a hard conversation. That's all part of it, and it has zero impact on how he feels about you as a person. He still cares about you as a person first, and I think that goes such a long way with players when they know that you do care about them and you have their best interests at heart. And ultimately, I think that makes them more receptive when you do have those hard conversations as a coach. And that was something, one of the main things I took from him. And again, no secret as to why he's having the success that he is.
Coming up, we talk to Trent about the transition from playing to coaching and leading a young team to success. This and more when The Landscape, presented by Hospitality Staffing Solutions, returns. Now let's talk about you transitioning from your player career to your coaching career, and it kind of happened pretty quickly, right? Take us back to 2018-19. You had been gone from the organization for a bit. You came back, you were in training camp, and then what happened?
Yeah, in training camp, and at that point coming off my fourth ACL surgery, so was trying to get back up to speed and fight for a roster spot here towards the end of my career as a 30-year-old, which is difficult to do. And we had a big group of veterans, I think 8, and in this league you can only dress 5. So there were, early in the season, myself as well as some others were sitting out, and we were kind of rotating through the lineup. And our general manager at the time, Bill Zito, along with Chris Clark, who's now our general manager but was in our development staff at the time, came to me and said, look, you can stay here as a player. We want to have you in our group, but playing time might be hard to come by just with, managing the veteran group we had, as well as a lot of the young prospects that are there, which I understood. But he did say that they're short a staff member, and he thought I'd be a great coach, and was gauging my interest. And my first reaction was, hell no. I wanted nothing to do with coaching. I never thought about it before. It's a hard thing to think about the next chapter when you're so focused on the day-to-day and trying to be better. And for me, coming back from that injury, that was my 100% of my focus. But I took a couple weeks, and I had just gotten married and had a month-old child, little boy at the time. So started thinking about, the future at that point. And it's a very difficult thing to get back into hockey or to get back into sports when you leave. So I thought, after talking about it with my wife, that it was a good opportunity to just try it for a couple of years. We're in Cleveland, again, a city that we love and is close to all our family in Columbus, so it wasn't like we had to move across the country. Got to stay close to home, and became an assistant coach. I was in equipment in practice one day and in a tracksuit the next, right around Halloween. So kind of funny how that worked out. And but I'm so grateful that I did, and that Bill Zito saw something in me that maybe I didn't see in myself. and I fell in love with it pretty quickly after that.
It's amazing how many different types of stories there are of guys that get into coaching at the end of their playing career. Happens a lot of different ways, and that certainly is a unique way to become a coach. Now, let's talk about your little taste of being a head coach a little earlier than maybe you anticipated because, of course, during the COVID season and then Mike Eves, the current head coach of the Monsters at the time, had some health issues, and all of a sudden you were not just on the staff, but the interim head coach of this team. At the time, what did you think about that opportunity? And now looking back, how much did that help you hit the ground running once you really got the title?
Yeah, it was a whirlwind. I think he had some health things popped up with him just 2 days before we went to our prospects tournament in Traverse City, and so all of a sudden I got the call from Rick Nash that I was going to be running that team, and so you don't have time to really prepare or think about it. You just dive in, and I think it's trial by fire, and in some ways that's good. You may never feel that you're ready, and you just go, and I think learning year for sure. Really difficult to managing, I think, personalities and relationships. As an assistant coach, you're a little bit of a bridge between the players and the head coach as well. You can get a little bit, I don't want to say closer, but the way that the discussions you have and the way that you talk to players can be a little bit different. You can be a little bit of the good cop. So that year was really difficult. Kind of managing and finding my groove as far as that goes. There were players on the team that I'm sitting out that I was close with and played with, and that was I lost a lot of sleep that year just thinking about the difficult conversations that I was going to have because I hadn't had many of that nature to that point yet, and so it again difficult, but so much learning, and I'm really grateful for the way that ended up working out and the lessons that I've learned that made me better the next 3 years.
Yeah, I'm sure it was super formative that year, just figuring it out on the fly, and then you apply all those lessons the next season. Let's talk about coaching in the American Hockey League, though, because it is highly unique, isn't it? You still have the same pressures of winning that you do at higher levels or at different levels, even down in college, but you're developing guys, and that's got to be a prime focus of what you do every day. So dealing with individuals, managing a team, there's a lot of plates to keep spinning.
Well, big time, and it's I think that's the most difficult thing is that nobody grows up dreaming of playing in the American Hockey League. All our players, including myself, grow up wanting to be in the National Hockey League, and so you're balancing that personal goals ultimately with what gets the majority of our players to that level and develops them the most is being part of a winning environment and winning games and winning trophies. And so we're trying to help them to understand that they're not getting paid just for points, and they're not getting paid just for offense. What NHL teams are paying players for is to help them win, ultimately. End of story, period. And whether you're a goal scorer or a penalty killer or a shot blocker or you're providing energy, they're all of equal value. But players coming in don't see it that way. They see points and they want to be a NHL point guy and an all-star, and the amount of players from the American Hockey League that end up filling those roles is a small number. Now there's a huge number of players that go from the American Hockey League to the NHL, but the amount that fill that role is very small. So you have to get players to buy into their role, which is always different than the role that they played coming in. Everybody was the best player. And getting them to understand and really invest in each other and team success when their number one goal is getting, moving on individually. Extremely difficult, a lot of balls in the air constantly. Roster is always fluid, lineups always changing. So you got to stay on your toes, but it's a great challenge, and again, I've learned a ton from it.
When we come back, we talk to Trent about the most important part of his journey through hockey and his life, his family. The Landscape, presented by Hospitality Staffing Solutions, returns right after this. All right, Trent, last one. Let's bring it back to the most important thing for anybody in this business, anybody in sports, and that's the support of your family. From when you were a kid growing up trying to make it in this business to your wife and kids today and the sacrifices they go through throughout a very busy season. What has your family meant to your success personally?
Yeah, no, everything. My parents have, growing up, hockey's not a cheap sport. and you're not just playing for your local high school. You're playing for a travel team, and you're going all over the country. And the sacrifices that they made with my sisters as well, just following me around so I could get to where I wanted to go. You're not here without them, right? And so that was the first part. And then now raising my own family, it's kind of more the same. It's a unique job and a lot of hours during the season. My wife's a single mom for the majority of the season with 2 little boys at home, and she does it all by herself. I'm home from dinner time until bedtime on some nights, and a lot of times we're gone, right? Whether that's home games or travel. So to get her on board and she's 100% supportive. You can't coach. You can't coach without having your spouse on board like that. And so thankful to her to take everything on so I can do what I love to do and support our family. And I'm not around during the winter months as much as I'd like, but they all understand what I'm doing, and they're happy for me, and they're all on board, which just makes it so much easier. And they're a part of it as well. So it's been a great, my oldest son is 6 now. It's been a great 6 years. And we got a younger one who's 2. So it's just the beginning as far as that goes, I hope. But again, without them, I'm not here.
Trent, thank you so much. Great conversation. And that'll do it for our chat today. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Go Monsters.
That'll do it for this episode of The Landscape. Make sure to tune back into future episodes as we bring you guests from across the land. You can find us on Rock Entertainment Sports Network or wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, I'm the voice of the Monsters, Tony Brown.